Hello there and welcome to our weekly show Guest of the Week. Today we are going to talk about a more social Europe and try to understand what does that really mean. For that, I have the pleasure to receive our Guest of the Week, Mrs. Bernadette Ségol, who is the Secretary General of the European Trade Union Confederation. Hello. And
good afternoon.
Welcome to you. So during the summit in June, the 28th EU head of member states decided to reinforce a social dimension of the European Monetary Union. This seems to be a bit quite obvious and tricky, as we know that for many years, Europe has never been reached. A social Europe has never been reached. So why trade unions in Europe never succeed to reach concrete goals concerning a more social Europe?
Well, I would not agree with that. In the past, the trade unions have managed to have a number of legislations on health and safety, legislations on equality, legislation on information consultation, legislation on European Works Council. We've managed to change the treaty and have a chapter on employment and to be a recognized social partners in the treaty. This was done even when Europe was in crisis. So I wouldn't say that we haven't succeeded in achieving some basic elements of social Europe. The problem is that now the European Union is rather trying to undo what was done before. And certainly, as far as social Europe is concerned, on the economic and monetary union, it is very clear to us that the economic policies that are being carried are against social Europe. And that's the problem.
Yeah, but there remains also social problems today, like as unemployment, poverty, that's social.
Well, that's exactly what I mean, because the economic policies that have been carried have increased unemployment, have increased considerably inequalities and poverty. And therefore, what we are calling social Europe now in the economic and monetary union would be first a change in these policies to reverse this unemployment problem. But we are very clear that this doesn't mean that social Europe doesn't mean that you should go back to the national borders, that you should repatriate all the social acquis at national level. On the contrary, we want more of it.
So to tackle unemployment and poverty, so the Europe has a strategy called Europe 2020 strategy. So by 2020, the European Union wants to see 75% of its overall population be employed and reducing poverty by at least 20 million of people in the EU. For that, the Commission proposed a scoreboard to help identify major employment and social problems in the different member states. However, social indicators are not binding, and they are not sanctioned for the EU member state if they don't.
This is exactly the problem. You can't deal with the European and Monetary Union and the social problem we have only with statistics. These statistics have to be to show that something else has to be done. And unfortunately, the last council didn't go for that. So the scoreboard, it's all very nice to have statistics on poverty, but what do you do about it?
This is exactly what we thought when we read the result of the last summit. There was something like the social dimension of the economic and monetary union. And we just talk about a scoreboard and statistics. Well, that's fantastic.
But
people need jobs. They don't need a scoreboard today.
We said a scoreboard is valuable if it is binding. If when you prepare the country-specific recommendation, you have to adjust this country-specific recommendation to the social situation in the various countries. We haven't managed that.
Is it realistic to hope that one day social indicators will be binding like the economic ones, by the way?
Well, what is realistic? Do they want to continue having social unrest? Do they want to, the politicians, the leaders in the European Union,
country.
Do they want to continue to have the Eurosceptics all over the place who are just saying, well, if the European Union and the Economic and Monetary Union is bringing more unemployment, is bringing more inequalities, is
But
bringing
when I
more...
say realistic, do you really hope that one day it will happen? So we will have some binding indicators concerning social dimension.
I think we have to fight for it, and I think we have to believe in it. In the current political context, I think it's going to be very difficult, but things can change. Not overnight, but things can change, and trade unions are there to go for change.
Concerning the social situation in the different EU countries, there are still huge gaps in Europe. If we take the example of poverty, if we take the example of youth unemployment is about 7%, or a little bit more than 7%. In Germany, it's about 63% in Greece, according to Eurostat. These are the figures for 2012. If we take the poverty, and there is still big difference between Bulgaria, where almost half of the population is at risk of poverty and social exclusion. This amount is 3 times lower in Sweden, in the Netherlands, also in the Czech Republic. So this big difference it's really difficult to tackle with it. So how can you hope to reach a real coordination if we consider those disastrous figures?
I would first of all insist that the economic policies that have been carried have increased these divergences.
The crisis, first of all?
You have more divergences now between the countries and in the countries between the people than you had before. So it is clear that these divergences are a big problem. And of course, it does. We are not bringing people together by having these divergences. But I think
so we have to stop the austerity policies.
Of course, we have to stop austerity policies. Of course, if you have a situation where austerity policies are only increasing unemployment, increasing poverty, increasing divergences, you've got to do something about it. And I think we've had some more flexibility in some countries about these austerity policies, but that's not enough. Not only do we need to be more flexible and on this requirement at national level, but the ETUC is standing for a big recovery plan, investment plan for sustainable growth and good jobs. That's what we need at European level. Otherwise, we risk to have another decade, a lost decade with very high unemployment in Europe.
But what does that really mean in action, concretely?
Concretely, for instance, you could have a much bigger increase of the capital of the European Investment Bank, and
which has been done.
No, they have increased it by 10 billion. 10 billion is not enough. If 10 billion, if you want to have something which would look like the Marshall Plan after the war, sorry.
10 million is not a Marshall Plan.
No, 10, this is not it. So we have had a situation where member states, governments have given loads of money to save the banks. And now, if we want to mobilize money for sustainable growth and good jobs, then we are not making it. Now, the European Investment Bank is not the only solution. Our German affiliate has proposed a different system to start such a recovery plan. And I think there are different ways of doing it. But telling us it's not possible, it's wrong. It's wrong. It was possible to spend billions and billions to save the banks, and they should save employment.
We mentioned the youth unemployment, which is one of the biggest problems nowadays in Europe. But meanwhile, less than 4% of the working age population in the Euro area comes from different member states. So that could be maybe a solution. Tell me your opinion on that. Will it be a way to tackle this issue? I mean, working abroad?
We believe that mobility is a good thing in Europe, but you're not going to solve the unemployment problem through mobility. First of all, because this mobility has been very selective, and it has only given jobs to those who are best skilled, which means brain drain in a number of countries. And you are not going to start the economy if all the young people or the people who are qualified are actually going abroad. That's the first thing. The second thing is, let's be very careful. What happened in Italy was that workers were going from the south to the north. And this has created what we know as the Mezzogiorno, where Italy, the south is only surviving through transfers from the north to the south. I don't think this is what Europe wants to do. So mobility is a good thing in Europe, but it's not going to solve our problem and the problem of the young people.
Mm-hmm. And continuing on youth unemployment, there are two main programs to tackle youth unemployment: the Youth Initiative, which mobilized up to 8 billion euro for the period 2014-2020, and the Youth Guarantee, which offers a job or a training to every young European without any activity 4 months after having left school. So what do you think? In theory, it's a good idea, but practically, is it really enough? 8 billion euros?
No, it's not enough. It's a good idea, but it's not enough. But the problem is that it is not yet implemented, because member states need money to implement the youth guarantee. You need to put money for this youth guarantee. The 6 or 8 billion are not going to be enough. And if the member states are squeezed because they have to, think only of their deficit, the support from the EU is not going to be enough to implement the youth guarantee. So we are in favor of this youth guarantee, but we are telling governments, look, you need to be a bit more free about your deficit in order to be able to implement it.
To have more time.
You have more time, yes. I think we should be very clear about that. You can't decrease such a big debt and public deficit in 2 years. It's not possible. I think the Belgians, when they had such a big problem, it took them 15 years to do it. They have managed to go from a public debt of 120 to a public debt of 100, if my memory is correct, which is good, but still not enough for the EU in 15 years.
What about the youth initiative? Because actually, what do we say to the young people is that, well, after 4 months, we are going to give you a job, or maybe not a job, maybe just a training. Well, that's fantastic.
Well, it's better than nothing.
Training, the young people, they know that. It's a generation of training.
It's a generation of stage rather than internship, rather than training. Good training is not so much available. And if we could at least bring that possibility and have a message to these young people that we are not letting you down, we need you on the labor market, and we are going to act, that would be not solve everything, but it would be a first step in the right direction. My problem is actually, where will the money come from to do that? Because the billion that are put at the disposal of the member states over, I don't know, I don't remember, 7 years, I think. It's not enough.
And the EU is running out of money.
The EU is running out of money. They are putting pressure on the governments to spend less. So they've got to deliver as well.
So you're pessimistic?
Look, I think we have to fight. If I said I'm pessimistic, it would mean I'm not going to fight. But I think we have to. I think the voice of the workers, the voice of the trade unions, has to be heard. If we stop that fight, then I will be pessimistic.
Can we say that in this difficult time, you're going to continue to fight, but you don't have a lot of hope?
I think you can say we are going to continue to fight. And if we were not carried by hope, we would not be fighting so much. I think we still have hope.
Okay, we need to stop here. So thank you, Mrs. Ségol, for accepting our invitation. And thank you all to follow us on Euronet Plus. See you next week.
Thank you.